This is the man from Modesto. 2 nights ago, I had a powerful set of dreams. I want you to understand how amazing this set of dreams is. It's 8 dreams, 4 pairs of dreams, and this filled my entire night of dreaming. It's the first time in my entire life that I've been able to recall an entire night of dreams, and 8 dreams is my record. My old record was from 1996, 7 dreams recalled in one night. So I just want to give you a little background. I also want you to understand how much groundwork God laid in me so that I would receive this dream and understand something very important, an important component of this message. I won't explain that until close to the end. This is a little bit longer than usual, but I hope that you will watch this entire message. When the dream starts, the first scene is very simple. There's a man standing inside a home. All the walls have a fresh coat of white paint. On the ground, there's like a white tile that leads to the entryway, and there's a lot of gray dust. If you've ever repainted a house and you sanded the wall first, you'll get all this fine white dust. That's what it looks like. He's also got this kind of creme brulee colored carpet. It's this thick shag carpet like this, and he has some piles of this white dust swept up in different places. And the man is looking around. He's very pleased with his new home. He's very happy about it, and he's looking at the dust, and he thinks to himself, later, I will need to back. This man in a new house is a new Christian, a new believer, recently converted, redeemed in the blood of Christ. The reason the house is swept is because a swept house represents someone who has cast out demons. The house is not fully swept, meaning this man has not fully been delivered from every issue in his life. This also means he's been saved less than 1 year and that he is an immature Christian. This is the first pair, the scene in his house, and now him walking out near his house. He walks out his front door. There's this beautiful green landscape, lots of trees. There's some areas with grass or stone mixed with grass, and he's walking on a walkway, and he's filled with energy, he's filled with joy, the kind of experience we have as a Christian pondering the Lord and salvation, right? And he has this great kind of a mood, and he's walking, but suddenly he hears a noise, and he looks over, and there's like a small creek flowing with water near him, and up from the embankment comes this woman, and she's wet. Now, she has a white dress on, and she enters the walkway ahead of him and starts walking away, and he sees her, and because the white dress is wet, it's now see-through, and he sees that she has these red underwear on and this black bra. And so he wants to help. He says, listen, can I help you somehow? I see that you've fallen into the water. And she says, yes, listen, I have this appointment at the courthouse, and I'm worried about it. I need to get there, and I'm worried about it, right? And he says, well, how are you going to get there? And she doesn't have any way to get there. So he says, listen, and he shows her a map, and he says, this is the map of the local transportation. On my blog, in the description on this video, I'm going to put a link to a blog post I've already created, and I have a sketch of it there, so you can look at it. And he points with his hand, look, if you go like this, he said, if you take the public transportation, you'll have to go all the way up this route, get an exchange right here, and then you'll have to go down this route. And he shows that it will be simpler if you walk like this. He says, honestly, it will be faster if you walk. Those are the words he uses. Honestly, it will be faster if you walk. The woman represents a spirit of immodesty and a spirit of lust, an unclean spirit. The man doesn't understand what's there, so he goes over and he interacts with her. And she makes up a different story because unclean spirits are deceiving spirits. Now, this court case that she's worried about represents Judgment Day. That's what her real fear is, because she's a demonic spirit and she has no chance on Judgment Day. She's an unclean spirit. I wanted to write a fallen spirit. The Holy Spirit said, no, not a fallen angel, an unclean spirit. That's what she represents. We go to the third scene. The man is walking toward his home. The woman is on the walkway walking ahead of him. When suddenly, from some bushes on the right-hand side, out jumps this man, and he's got like this loose-fitting kind of, I'll do it like this. He's got like a loose-fitting leather jacket like this, and it's a zip jacket, and he jumps out and he's like, ho-ho! Something like this. He's like, ho-ho, you there, give me all your valuables. And he's kind of doing this thing like he's got some kind of, he's gesticulating, he's doing something. It's very forced and theatrical, not natural at all. And he's like, yeah, ho-ho, you there, give me your valuables. And the man looks at him and doesn't say anything and walks up, picks the guy up and throws him over. There's like a retaining wall off to the left side of this walk, and just throws him over and watches him hit the ground. Boom. Then he runs and he points to him and he says, quickly, come with me. So the two of them run together to his house. He gets to his house and he fumbles a bit with the lock and he gets the door open. He's like, here we are. And he looks, and the woman's not looking at him. She's looking back down the road and she yells, quickly, I've found his home. The door is open. Come on, come with me. Quickly, come here. And the guy realizes, oh, it's a con. This woman is working with the other guy. She's working with the other guy. And so he quickly jumps in and tries to close the door behind him. And she grabs the door and they start fighting back and forth with it. That's the end of that dream. And here's the interpretation. The woman, we know who she is, an unclean spirit of immodesty and lust. She wants to get in. This open door is a spiritual term, very common. And if you go to Revelation 3:20, God says, open the door, I want to come in. So a door is something you can open and a spirit will come in. This spirit wants to gain access to his soul, wants to be involved in his life. That's what the struggle at the door represents. He now understands what it is and he's fighting it. This is a spiritual struggle, a very simple thing to kind of understand. The skinny guy represents a spirit. Now, this is a little difficult for me to understand. So if the description is sketchy, it's because I don't get it. It's not narcissism, but it's something that can enter a man and affect a person to behave like the guy was behaving. It's a spirit that causes someone to understand how other people are looking at them and to want to control that by pretending to be something they're really not. So this guy is trying to look some kind of a way. I don't even know what that way was because the behavior was just strange and unnatural. His mannerisms were not natural. It wasn't true to who that guy might have really been if he wasn't that spirit. Or a person might not really be if they didn't have that spirit. So he's trying to create an impression. That's his whole idea. He wants to impress people that he's a certain kind of a way. And that's why he's doing this kind of a thing, which I didn't even know how to interpret. It was just unnatural and strange, right? So that's the kind of a spirit that this guy is, this skinny guy. And also, it apparently is not a very strong spirit. The new believer understood what it was and easily threw him down, right? So this dream now kind of resets to the point where the man is walking behind the woman. Again, the skinny guy in the leather jacket jumps out, ho ho, and the guy just says, nope, throws him down again, boom. And this time he runs past the woman into his house. But for some supernatural reason, when he gets to the door, both of them arrive together and they're pushing on the door. And the woman puts her arm over the top of the door and she has this kind of like a little blue thing. It looks like a gun, but honestly, it looks more like an electric drill. And it has this curious point on it. If you look at the blog, I have a sketch that looks pretty close. It well represents what I saw. And he doesn't understand what it is. He thinks it's a gun and then he realizes it's something else. But he gets down on the ground so she can't hit him if she fires it. And he uses his weight to block the door and they're pushing on the door. And that scene, I'm going to explain what the gun is, the blue handgun thing, a little bit later because it becomes more important in one of the last scenes. So now this scene ends and suddenly I find myself in this building and I don't understand where I am. Behind me there's a straight wall and on each side of me there's an opening that I believe are hallways and people are coming from there and coming closer together and going down a hallway that's kind of in front of me. But I don't really see what's there. And I think there's one door over here, but I just have a sense it's like maybe some offices or something. I'm standing here, I don't understand where I am at all. And this is where it gets creepy. People are dressed kind of nice. And the way the decor is makes me think that it's a little bit feminine. So I'm trying to guess where I am. And I start thinking this must be a beauty salon. I think, yeah, this is a beauty salon. That's what this is. And so a woman comes around. She's dressed nicely. She has very dark hair. It's kind of coiffed up a little bit in the front, I think. I think she's got something going on here. And it's about shoulder length, very dark, a little bit wavy, this woman. She's got some big earrings on, a little bit of makeup. Her collar is a big collar. And she's got this well-pressed, new-looking kind of white shirt on. And she's got some form-fitting pants, right? And she's carrying like a clipboard and maybe a book. And she has them across her chest like this. Or at least when I stop her to ask her a question, that she turns to me. She's walking and she turns to me and does like this. And I ask her, I said, excuse me, and she turns and I ask, where is this? And she looks at me and she says, you don't know where you are? I said, no, where is this? She said, you are in the place where you lose your soul but are allowed to keep your body until you die. This is one of the strangest things I've ever heard. And I say nothing, I'm just in shock. This is the place where you lose your soul but are allowed to keep your body until you die. What? So I just stare at her and she looks at me, and since I don't answer, she says something else. This is Bethel Redding. That just blew me away, and that scene ends. People, I am not headhunting Bethel Redding. I don't hate those people. I understand that there are serious problems there, and I want people to be set free. I've seen the damage. When I lived in Modesto, I saw people go there and their lives just get ruined. Why? Because of the wicked spirits that are involved there come into their life and start damaging them. Just like that spirit of lust, just like that spirit of self-aggrandizement wanted to get into the man's house and he had to fight that. That's the kind of things that come into people's life because they're all associated with that business. So this dream totally surprised me. I wasn't praying about it, nothing. This is just what God showed me. And at the end of this video, I'm going to explain to you. God told me why he's sending me this dream at this time. So I comes back, I leave that scene, I come back, and I'm in the same place. Except now, there aren't any people. I think maybe I see one guy walk by, but there's no one around. And I look behind me on this wall, and there's this little chest of drawers. I drew again, representative, but not entirely accurate. There's a kind of a little hallway table, and it has these square drawers on it in rows and columns. They're all lined, so it's like a little matrix. I don't know exactly how many they are, but I think it's like 5 across and 3 deep, maybe just 2 rows deep. I don't know exactly. It's painted very nicely. It looks like someone did it by hand. It's not one solid color, but it's like a kind of mix of maybe some light blues or some grays or something. And someone has also taken lightly taken the end of a paintbrush, like a wide paintbrush like this, and just kind of put, you know, in some places, some little flecks of purple, maybe pink or something, some kind of pastel-y kind of color, basically, right? Just to make it a little more soft, you know. It's a good piece. Whoever did it, they did a good job. I thought it was nice looking. So I think, whoa, I can prove that I was here. I can prove that I was here. I keep thinking this to myself. Oh, I'm going to prove it. I'm going to prove it. And I open this little drawer and I look at what's inside. If you go to the blog post, I have some sketches of what's in there. But what's interesting is, and I don't really understand this yet, as I'm going through the drawer, the contents of the drawer change 3 times. In the first scene, there are all these little things that look like marbles. They might be like dimes. There's some kind of a concept of a small circle. There might be marbles, they could be dimes, something, and they're all loose in the drawer and they're floating around. There are also 2 large objects. The first one, I think, has a picture of George Washington on it. So something like a large coin or something like this. And the other one, I drew a sketch on it. It's like a big teardrop shape. It's a little larger than an Eisenhower dollar. That kind of changes, and suddenly they're a square tin, maybe about that big inside, maybe smaller. And I think that all of the marble things are now organized and put in that tin. And the other thing is another tin about the same size, but instead of being flat across the end that opens, like that, it's kind of curved. So it's kind of a curve like that. So rather than flat at the open side, it's kind of curved. So that's what I see in there. And it kind of, the contents of the drawer, I don't understand why the contents of the drawer were changing as I looked at it, but they were. I maybe opened a second drawer, but I don't think so. There's like a little kind of a squarish kind of a thing that you open it, and the bottom of this little square has a curved concept involved. I don't know, there's something, it curves down or it curves out, or there's a little roundish kind of a thing that you can grab. But I grabbed it with just 2 fingers to open it. So that's that thing, and I was really excited about it in this section of the dream, and that's the only thing that happens in this dream, is me looking at the contents of this little hallway table. It's maybe a little lower than my ribs, I suppose, maybe. That scene ends. So again, there are these 2 pairs, the man in his house, the man walking. That's the first pair. The 2 scenes of the fight at the door. That's the second pair. Then now these 2 appearances in this particular part of the hallway where it looks like 3 hallways come together in an open space that seems to be like offices or people doing administrative work. That's the second pair. The fourth pair, the last pair, starts off, I'm standing in a kind of a high place. There's like a hill, and it runs down like this. And down here, there are some shops. And in these shops, there's a walkway. It's kind of square like this, right? There's nothing on this side. These two openings, these are a beginning and an end, or a beginning or two beginnings, however you want to look at it. And everything seems to be made of wood. But I'm standing at the beginning, I'm standing up on this hill, and I realize, wow, I have no idea how I arrived here. That means God put me here. These are my thoughts. That means God put me here. And if God put me here, that means I have power to back me up. So then I say, because I know the Holy Spirit's with me, so I say to the Holy Spirit, then let's go down and see what will happen. And I walk down this walkway, uneventful. I go down the flat part like this, and I'm looking at all the buildings because I realize like I need to remember like what these things are. What kind of buildings are they? And they all kind of, some of them have like neon signs or something like that, but it's daytime, so they're not on. And they kind of look like they might be like a kind of a restaurant slash bar, maybe like a TGI Fridays or something like this. It's a place where people go to relax and maybe do some shopping. Some of the buildings are shops, I think, and there are people walking around, couples, maybe a few kids or something, and people are walking around. It's not packed with people, but it's not vacant either. So now I walk down this flat area, and at this flat area, off to the right, the buildings seem to be elevated somehow, but in the interior part, it's all kind of same level on the ground. So like if you open the door, it'd be on the same level. But up there, the entrance doors seem to be, you know, much higher up, maybe even 8 or 10 feet. So I start walking up the third leg, and I get more than a quarter of the way up, maybe about a third of the way up. And from behind me, I hear this now familiar voice, "Ho ho, give me your valuables." And I turn back and I see the guy, except this time, instead of the leather coat, he's wearing like a Vietnam era jacket. Now I looked for some images online. The closest I can find is something called an M65, Vietnam era fatigues. It was an olive drab color. On the blog, I found the design that looks most similar, but the color is definitely olive drab. If you've been in the Army, you've been in the Marines, you get those old, those grenades that are painted olive drab. The ones that look like a baseball, almost like a baseball so that you can throw it. The American can throw the baseball easier, right? You pull the pin, release the lever, and boom, right? It's that color, olive drab, military olive drab. So he's got this jacket on, and I look at him, and I don't say anything, but I think, okay, where's the woman? And I look around for her. No woman appears, but a man steps out of the crowd. I'm like, okay, he's working with a man this time. I start to back up a little bit because I know now my job is to beat feet. I'm gonna run up this hill and get away from these guys. So I start backing up a little bit, but I'm watching them. And now this time, a third man steps forward out of the crowd. He's got a bit of a belly. He's a bit bigger than them. He may not be taller than them, but if he is, he's a little bit taller than them, not shorter, I think. And he's got a full head of white hair. And this guy has something in his hand, and I look, and then I realize it's the little blue gun. And I turn to start to run, and he shoots. It shoots, and it hits me about right here. Boom. And I just turn and run. And I run as fast as I can go, and I ditch them. And so I go to my mother's house. And I arrive, and I kind of knock on the door. Her front door is like this kind of a glass door or else clear plastic. The top has kind of like this mesh form, and the bottom half is like a big square, just clear, hard plastic. Or maybe glass, I don't know. But you can see through it, right? So I'm knocking on the door, and she arrives. I say, listen, I just ditched these guys. Can you let me in? I need to wash up. She says, sure, come on in. So I go in, and as I'm washing my hands in her sink, she makes herself something to eat. She's very tired. And she sits in the kitchen, and she eats some food, and then she puts her head down like this, and she's sitting at her table, elbows on the table, forehead in her palms, because she's tired. She's worked hard, and now she's tired, and she's resting at this table, just trying to relax a little bit out of fatigue. I'm washing my hands, and I hear this boom, 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 boom on the door, and I look up, and I see through the glass, it's the guy in the Vietnam jacket. I'm like, man, how did he find me here? And he's banging on the door, and he sees me, see him, and he says, aha! Didn't you know that we put a tracker in you? We didn't have to chase after you because we just followed you right here. I was like, man, there he is. And then another guy appears at the door. the second guy who was on the walk. I was like, oh, there he is. And then a third guy appears that I've never seen before. I don't even know who is this guy. And the three of them are pushing on the door, banging on it, bam, 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 bam. And they kick open the door, boom, and in they come. And as they come in, I'm watching them, and from around the corner comes the white-haired guy again, the kind of thicker, heavier set guy. He's not a muscular heavier set, he's a fat heavier set guy. And here he comes. And in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm gonna have to scuffle with these guys. I can't escape. I'm trapped by the walls of the home. But now my mother is here, and maybe while I'm tussling with one guy, she will, dong, hit him with a pan or something. This is what I'm thinking in my head. So they come in and they kind of form around me a little bit. The white-haired guy stays in the back, and the Vietnam guys over here are to my right. So I go up and I, boom, kick him in the stomach, and I, bam, I punch him right in the right of the jaw, and he just goes straight down, boom. And then I jump over so that he's laying on the ground between me and the second guy. And the second guy, he jumps at me, and I grab his collar and I shuck him down, boom. If you've ever wrestled, you know what that move is. Boom, I just throw him down, and then I take my right knee and I put it, boom, on his right forearm like this, and then I start to punch him, boom, 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 boom. And as I'm punching him, the third guy comes at me, and I grab his arms and we're tussling like this. The mom never hits him with the frying pan. It doesn't happen. But I bring him down, and again, I put my right knee on his forearm, bam, and I start punching him, boom, 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 boom. All these parts are important because they have an interpretation. There's a meaning in all of the events in these dream scenes. The white-haired guy never does anything. That scene, it advances to two of the guys have already departed somehow, and they are cuffing up. Let me back up. There's a scene in between. I'm running through the house. I'm running through the house saying, where is it? Where is it? Where are my valuables? Where are my things? And I find my wallet and something else that was valued to me, an expensive cell phone or something. And I see these things, I'm like, they never got them. And then a voice says to me, they were with you always. And what that represents is I'm going to back up a little bit. In the months before I had this dream, and this is the prep work that the Holy Spirit laid out, I had no less than 20 dreams. My wife had some of these dreams about you have to close the door. My wife had one dream that it repeated over and over and over to her all night long. You have to close the door. You have to close the door. You have to close the door, right? It means we have to reject all of these spirits. And in these dreams, people were trying to steal my valuables. And finally, there was somebody broke into my father's house. What are these valuables? They're the spiritual treasure that God has given us. Work and live so that you have a treasure in heaven. For where your treasure is, so will your heart be also. And we're supposed to give all of our mind and all of our heart and all of our soul and all of our strength to God, right? So, backstory off, God laid all this work, and now it's culminated in this set of dreams because God wanted me to understand the importance of this. That the people who are caught up in these false churches, they're not lost to God. They're not lost to God. See, this is what I'm worried about. Like, what's God's treasure? What goes to heaven? What kind of valuables does a Christian man really lose fearing? A righteous man fears losing a soul from before God. Don't fear losing a person from your congregation, but do fear losing a man from before God. So that's the real fear. Those are the real valuables. The only thing you can take with you to heaven is souls, right? Other people saved and not lost. That is an important message that God really built up and finalized in this set of 8 dreams that took me the whole night. Right? Something incredible. I've never had this happen before. I'm not able to remember 8 dreams or an entire night of dreams. God did this. God sent these dreams. God backed it up. God forted me to do this. God girded me up to remember all those dreams and to bring them to you now. So that part ends, and I go over, and these men are being put in cuffs. One of them is cuffed and is being led away as I watch, and the other man, they're just ratcheting down the cuffs on him, and they're just leading him away. And at this point, one of the women who seems like a detective or someone with authority, she's dressed kind of simple, maybe in some darker blue colors, but not a uniform. She steps forward, she has like this light-colored frizzy hair, and she looks at me and she says, I understand your situation because I am also from Ukraine. Although these things are symbolic, I also believe that there are going to be some kind of real events that happen very similar or nearly exactly like what I saw in the dream. If there are any dissimilarities, my sketches are not perfect. Some might say, well, but it's not exactly, the dimensions and the ratios are not. Yeah, come on, people. I'm just not that great of a sketch artist. I did my best. They're not terrible. They're representative, but you can definitely see like, oh yeah, this is a match. If you go and look, and later those things really do exist, someone will be able to easily say, a reasonable person could say, yeah, okay, that's it. That's a match. And I believe that this is going to be a real woman in some kind of an event somewhere. While I was washing my hands, there was like a cherry-sized red welt here. I tried to squeeze it. Nothing came out. And here's the thing. There was never really a device in my skin. I prayed about this, and this is what the Holy Spirit told me. They are tracking people. And I was like, how are they tracking people? When you use a financial card somewhere, if you pull cash, it records you were there. If you have a loyalty card at a store, it records you were there. They're tracking your movement. It records that you go there. And it knows that if this is where you buy your food, you don't live too far away. There's an easy assumption that you live within a certain amount of place from there. For example, if you go to a Safeway store or a Save Mart, they realize that there's another Save Mart that's way over here, so you must live closer to this one, otherwise you'd go to that one. So there are some easy assumptions that someone can make to figure out where you live. Or if you always go drinking at a certain bar and you always use this one ATM to pull out whatever your budget is, $30 for the evening, say, and you always go to this one ATM to get that money, they know for some reason this guy has a place nearby where he hangs out, where she hangs out. So they're figuring out where you are. But the one, and I think most people might think, well, yeah, we kind of knew that. But this one, he told me something else, and this is the most interesting part, I think. He said that even if you were to turn off your phone and pull out the battery, and then you drove to meet your friends at a certain place, they know who your friends are, because you spend money at the same place regularly when those people are there. So let's say you did that, but your friend did not. So they track him there, and they realize that he leaves at a certain time. They realize that you were there because they can measure the time intervals and they can calculate backwards. Well, it's about 20 minutes away from his house, and the friend arrived there at that time and used his card. So we can, 45 minutes to eat and then a 20-minute drive. This guy spent here. Oh, he was definitely with him. So they can figure out where you are, not simply directly by, even if you used a car that can't be tracked, you use roadways where there are no cameras at intersections, they can still figure out you were there with a simple bit of logic. So this is what the Holy Spirit told me, that yes, they are tracking you. And that's why I went to this woman's house. Now, why didn't the woman help me? Because some people don't understand about deliverance. They need someone else, a trained deliverance minister, to come into their life and call on God's angels, the police force. They are symbolic representative of God's angels who come in and enforce the authority given to God's people by Jesus, which Jesus received from God, right? So those uniformed policemen, they are an organized force who bind up, put the handcuffs on these unclean spirits and clean out the mother's house. So who is the mother? Well, Jesus said, who are my mother, my brother, and my sisters? Those who obey God. So I am somebody who seeks to obey God. I try, right? Maybe I'm not perfect. But who's this mother? Also someone else, another child of God. A mother still represents one of the brethren, a believer. That's most of the interpretation. So, but I did write down all the different items. If you go to the blog post, I'll put a link in the description. You can go there and look at it. I defined most of the things. I did pray about all of the interpretations. It's taken me 2 days to kind of flesh it out and refine it. So after all this, I asked God, why are you sending me this dream? Why is this? And God said that God is going to cause some people to question, is this of God? Some people who are involved in this NAR, Emergent Church / INC, they keep changing the name to kind of confuse you about who they are, so that when you see someone talking bad about the NAR, but you're in the Emergent Church, you won't realize, wow, that's the group I'm in. So they keep changing the name. So they use some different names, and they might even have a different name. But if you do some research, you can find out who these people are. So that's the reason God is sending me, doing all this work in me right now, is to deliver this message so that some people who are asking, is this of God, will find it. God will cause you to make your way here and watch this video and be set free. Or maybe you'll ask someone else and say, listen, there's a guy, he had a vision, and you can go see it like this. There's one last dream. I return, this is the 8th scene. For some reason, God told me I break it into 8 scenes. I want there to be 8 scenes. I don't know why, but he said there's 8 scenes. The 8th and final scene, I'm back on this hilltop. I walk down. No, I don't start on the hilltop. I start at the end, at the beginning of the walk. And I walk down, and on the right side, there's a woman who I think is sitting on a seesaw, a kind of a teeter-totter, right? It's like this, there's a fulcrum. She's sitting down here, and I come over and I sit there, and I tell her the whole story that I just told you. I tell her the whole thing, and she does this. Right? She's like, I mean, if I did, I'd go, right? But she just does this and doesn't look at me. And then I say this, which basically is what I said at the very beginning of this video. I look at her, I said, don't you understand? Don't you see? I said, I'm just a man. I beat 4 men. 4 men! I can't do this on my own. It's impossible for a man to do this. Only God can do this. Only God has done this. Can't you see? It's only God. It has to be God. And that's the end of the whole thing, right? And that is what I want to understand. If you're coming here, listen, I can't remember all those dreams on my own. I can't remember an entire night of dreaming. I can't. God has anointed this message. God has blessed me. God has caused that this would happen. All those dreams, I didn't understand them until all those dreams. And all these 20 dreams I had before 2 nights ago, I would go somewhere and I would step away and I'd come back and I'd see that someone had stolen my things. I'd say, who stole it? She was like, we didn't see anything. Nobody saw anything. And it was always because there was an unlocked door. Something was left unprotected. Something was left unsecure. And that represents a lack of prayer. And I don't just represent myself in those dreams. I represent the body of Christ. We need to be praying, Lord, bind these spirits. Lord, set people free. And if you get set free, you need to clean your house and then start praying for those left behind in that bondage. They are still our brethren. They were with us always. They were never lost. But we need to pray for them to be set free from the deception, to be set free from the evil spirits. One last thing, this 4th man who, I think there might be, they say there's 3 waves, Kansas City, Toronto, Lakeland. All of them fell apart because of the exposure of iniquity that was happening. I think there's going to be a 4th. There might be a 4th one. They always talk about 3 ways, but I think there's some 4th thing. But remember, just like these evil spirits always do, they hide in the back. They wait. I remember when this stuff first started, there were at least 3 prophecies that I heard. No, there were at least 2 prophecies that I heard, and a lot of other people quickly spread it. That this is a Trojan horse. This is a Trojan horse. They're biding their time. They're biding their time, and only later will the true evil of it really come forth. This is the man from Modesto reminding you as always to pray or be defeated.